And we have Mr. Daniel Bwala back with us, the essay to the President on policy and communication. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I know you were listening a little bit to some of the conversation that we're having in the beginning, and basically an expression of frustration really on the state of things in the country. And many people believing that the President is not really as firm as he should be on some of the issues that many Nigerians hold very dear. Our guest talked about corruption, but then there are other areas. But you've heard this before. Is this true? Is he not taking it as seriously as people would expect him to, or is this the way to go to calm frayed nerves?
Well, my apologies because of technical glitch. I actually haven't heard what he said. But if I understand your question as saying whether the president is firm on his policy or decision, I can tell you that the president is very committed to it, and that can be seen in the various activities of the ministries, departments, and agencies of government. The president wants to project himself as one who will allow systems to work themselves, allow institutions to work themselves, because if you recall, we're just coming off of the back of allegation that strong leaders influence institutions, they direct institutions, they control institutions. So the president would always want to allow institutions to run themselves, but it will ensure that the institutions of government are given all the wherewithal that they need to be able to function effectively.
I mean, that's a very interesting one there, wanting systems to work so that, and we've said it so many times, so that regardless of who comes into power, the system is stronger than you, Mr. Strongman or Strongwoman. You would have no choice but to adhere to what the system is saying. But that takes time. Do you think he'll be able to get these systems working and running well and functional before he leaves office? Even if he does spend 8 years in office?
Right, that's the idea of democracy. It's a work in progress. So we, as a people, we have to make up our mind on whether we want things to work organically or whether we want to influence things even if they are not consistent with organic growth. Oftentimes in life generally, when you try to influence something to grow faster than it should, you can see in the case of the natural evolution of chicken from egg and all of that, you may end up breaking it, because if you don't allow it to grow naturally and organically, you are likely going to affect the growth process by making it inefficient, or that much more later in the future it will start malfunctioning. I know there is the temptation of strong leadership in Africa, where we are coming off of the back of military regimes where you feel that a strong leader should be able to bypass protocol or wave the magic wand and try to make sure institutions work over. So let me give you an example. If a case is presented to, let's say, anti-graft body to investigate, there is this belief that the masses often have that the president should sort of, if the general perception of the public is that the person being investigated in the mind of the people has been adjudged as guilty. So they will want a situation where the president will wield the magic stick and ensure that the law enforcement agency of government kind of, go faster, even if the investigation is one that requires time. But the president is trying to change this idea. Let us allow institutions to work. We have the furthest step of the range, which is the media, who would always bring to light whether or not there is interference of government, whether or not things are going organically, and whether or not there is the influence of government in order to obstruct the course of justice. So however long it will take, we have to allow things to grow. It is like the economy. There are people who think that because the president came and then implemented some policies, that it should change overnight. It should not grow gradually by looking at the indices of growth economically. But it doesn't work that way. We have to allow system to work the way they are built to work. We can facilitate the movement of the system by making sure all the infrastructure that is needed for the system to function optimally are provided.
I want to take you up on something you talked about recently. I think it was on X. At the time, the military leader in Niger, I think his name is Abdurrahman Chiani, you responded to those allegations that he made. In fact, I want to use your words exactly. You said that they were baseless propaganda designed to create chaos and incite bad blood in northern Nigeria against President Tinubu. That puts a political angle to it. But you see, I'm going to get you to talk about that. But having at the back of your mind the fact that many people, especially in diplomatic circles, believe that, you know, the stand of President Tinubu as head of heads of governments in ECOWAS, and his stand when it came to those military coups in our neighboring countries were a little too hard. And many people have said that, you know, it's the economic community of West African states, not the political community of West African states. Why don't you focus on growing the economy in the region? Why are you delving into the politics of the place? And then seeing him a lot with President Macron made people to start believing that there might be some kind of collusion. With that in mind, you know, talk to us a little bit about our relationship with our neighbors in these hard times.
You know that this whole concept of theories around politics, economy, and governance is one that is intertwined. So there is economics of politics, and there is political economy. And sometimes when you try to move with them, they work hand in hand. For example, there is no way you can foster economic growth in the geopolitical region of the West Africa without looking at other indices that facilitate the economic development or collaboration. If there is insecurity, there's no way there will be integration of economic growth or collaboration among the West African states. If there are political problems, such as one is running a military regime, the other one is running a democratic government, how will the countries that are running democratic government relate with the military regime? So, for example, if you have a meeting of foreign affairs ministers, or you have a ministers or economic ministers, you'll find that there are incompatibility. And therefore, you have to look at the ideals of ECOWAS. The president being the leader of ECOWAS, he leads, he does not command. It has to be a resolution of the community in every state. Now, those ones who have decided to leave because of their problems with France, decided to create a problem for themselves in West Africa. If you have seen the posture of ECOWAS, they are looking at it from the point of view of managing them. Even when they threaten to leave, they say, okay, you have all the right to leave, you can give us timeline, but we are hoping that you will reconsider this in the course of going, because you cannot grow in isolation. It has to be a coming together. And at the beginning, yes, the president may have, you know, come out with strong stance, like saying, we're going to send military and all of that. This is what you see in international relations and diplomatic relationship. You remember Barack Obama once said that the red line for him is A, B, and C, and if it happens, he was going to, you know, deal with Iran. They crossed the red line. But then you have to find ways of still deploying your diplomatic skills to see how you can resolve. Because the days of demonstrating strong strength and power, they are gone. We have to work together as a people, as a community, and as neighbors. And Nigeria, of course, you may know, it will interest you to know, has been a senior brother to most of our West African neighbors, and have helped them tremendously and continue to help them in this endeavor.
Let's talk a bit about the economy, and maybe people are tying our economic growth in 2025 to the 2025 budget. A budget that many people have said is actually lesser in value. If you look at the value of the dollar in 2023, is actually lesser in value, yet very bold in the things it seems it wants to achieve. Is this the budget that can actually get Nigerians the economic development that they need, lift them out of poverty, improve their living standards, improve the quality of the money in their pocket? We actually saw reports towards the end of the year that says, from AfriInvest, I'm going to quote them, from AfriInvest, and they said that the naira might even get to 1,800 to the dollar by the end of this year. We're hearing that the inflation figures might actually still increase higher than where we are, and this lofty aim of 15% by the end of the year is not possible if we look at the economic figures. If we look at the figures on ground, it's not possible.
Yes, so it's bold and ambitious by saying that you're hoping to have the inflation by the end of 1 year. And budget is about estimates. It is not like a finality. Sometimes in the course of implementation, you might need to come with supplementary appropriation to the national assembly. But the question around dollar and naira, you need to know that we don't want a dollarized economy. We want a naira-based economy. And we don't use dollar in Nigeria. We use naira. When workers are paid, they are paid in naira. When they go to the market, if they buy homemade products, they are going to buy based on the strength and competition of the naira. And that's why we're looking at areas where the basic needs of the people will be homemade and home produce. Like, for example, in agriculture. Even this inflation that you're talking about, you can have inflation if you can deal decisively with agriculture, because a large part of the inflation is from the food inflation. The rising cost of food items is the one that has a cyclical effect in other areas of the economy. And if you look at that budget, you will see that security has a bold stay, because we know security affects agricultural production if you look at the Northwest and the Northeast. So if we're able to strengthen security in Nigeria, our people will go back to farms and we'll be able to have homemade produce that will serve our people. And then secondly, if you look at education, because empowerment of the people is also key to economic growth. So and if you look at agriculture, for example, part of the commitment of the president, even in the speech, is that we are going to ramp up, the effort to make sure there is agricultural boom in Nigeria. Once you do that, and then private sector come into play, believe me, it is possible for us to get the 15%. And even if we don't get the 15% and will come near that, it will still be considered as a progress. But it is better to set a target that cannot be achieved and work towards it than set a target that can be achieved and it become predictive.
I want to get your thoughts on one of the accusations also, not just about the budget this time, but even the media chats that he had with members of the media not too long ago. Basically an accusation that the president is not very people-centric in the way that he's carrying on and things he's saying. We're hearing him say some particular things that people are finding issue with. And then, of course, we see even people looking at the budget and saying this is such an anti-people budget. It's got nothing to do with the Nigerian person, despite the fact that before that budget presentation, before the media chat, the conversation had been on that maybe just so you can, Nigerians like optics, we like to feel a certain way. Maybe he should have said the budget was the budget of the common man, I remember that media chat was coming at a time when there was stampedes, and these stampedes were, caused in many ways, at least for the people who are involved, who are facing the situation. So if the economic situation was better, people wouldn't be lining up for rice and getting stampeded and dying in 3 states. I want to be able to get your, at least from a personal relationship that you have with the president, his mien when it comes to people-centric policies and human capital development. Is there some kind of work that needs to be done there in your view, or is this okay as is and we should expect the best from what we're hearing?
The thing is that people love to run with sound bites. And after he finished his chat, somebody said the budget is not people-centric, and then it caught fire in the media. What difference does it make if the subject of the budget is budget for heaven, but the content of the budget is people-centric? So people look at the caption to reflect the entire body of the budget. If you say it's a budget of restoration, for example, restoration to who? Is it to America or to England? Is the restoration of hope to the Nigerian people? Because they lost their hope because of the evolution of economic underdevelopment in Nigeria over time. And so we are looking at the fundamentals and ensuring that those things that keep economies strong, such as human capital, natural resources exploration, dealing with institutional framework, and ensuring that the climate is conducive for investment. All of these things are indices that talks about the growth or lack thereof of economy of a nation. Now, talking about people-centric president, I think, in my opinion, this president, in the last probably past 3 or 4 presidents, has demonstrated that he's the most people-centric president in Nigeria. What does it mean to be a people-centric president? A people-centric president is a president that looks at those things that affect people, common people, those things that affect the dinner table or the breakfast table, those things that keep parents awake at night because the next morning they may not be able to afford the school fees for their children. He introduced Nelfon, the agricultural something. He introduced a lot of agricultural initiatives that were, they think of having a sleepless night because of transportation of the next day. He introduced the CNG initiative. All of these things, who are they for? They are for the common people. Even when you remember the issue of the dollar, when he floated the naira, some people don't know it is people-centric initiative. Because when we were defending the naira, who were the beneficiaries of the racket? It is established people, the bank executives, it is manufacturers, the elite. They are the ones that access the dollar at a certain rate. They don't even use it for the purpose it is intended for. He decided, no, this economy must redistribute the wealth across the all platforms, and the common man must have that. The local government autonomy, what is it for? People-centric. Because we have forgotten about government at the local level. So everybody thinks my dream can only be achieved in Abuja. But by the introduction of local government autonomy, what is it meant for? So that people at the local level can access basic health care, basic things of security. They will be able to have good agriculture. They will attend to other chieftaincy matters and things that affect the common man. So this is the most people-centric president. But people want to run with punchline and soundbite.
I'm going to toss it to my colleague in Lagos. Ayo has a few questions for you.
Thank you, Kayla. You know, Mr. Bwala, it can't be easy for anyone in government at this time. I mean, you would want to admit that. And I know that there are issues you have to contend with, but that are befuddling. But we don't have to know all of that. So what would you advise? I mean, the president has put out a statement. What would, and of course, naturally, you would want everyone to line up behind him. But what would be your consideration, your counsel, in terms of what you expect people to do while waiting for this uhuru that the president is promising?
So the expectation of the Nigerian people will not be cut short. But one of the ways by which I believe that the citizens can key into government program, number one, is to have faith and trust in the leadership of the country. Faith and trust and allegiance to the flag and to the republic. And that is why the president has decided, you remember, based on the last fake meeting where they agreed on National Value Charter. This National Value Charter is to create a platform of sensitization, to the Nigerian people to understand that we grow together and then we can play our part in nation building. Why do you think America is considered the greatest country in the world? It's because of that true faith and allegiance that the American people give to the flag and to their republic. Now, because of politics and a lot of other factors in Nigeria, you'll find that people look at government from the prism of political party affiliation. This president, to come back to the point, this president, if you have noticed, in the way he run the affairs of the government, has had dealings with people from the opposition and other political parties, to the point that his own party keep criticizing him for reaching out to people across the aisles so we can have a government of national unity. What more can you expect from a president who wants to and has demonstrated by leadership that he wants national orientation where the people will have confidence in their government? And that does not, the fourth estate of the Randy media, they're always there to gauge and checkmate the government. So the people have faith knowing that the media is there to provide checks that you need. But the idea that people are even calling foreign government into Nigeria, you find that a military junta in another country wanting to divide Nigeria across region, and then Nigerians are buying into that. That is part of the things we want to deconstruct from the mind of the Nigerian people so we can have faith and true allegiance to the flag and the republic.
But Mr. Bwala, Nigeria has been, at least between Nigeria and Nigerians, the trust bank is in red. It's minus. It doesn't exist. And it's going to take quite a while to build it back, be it political, economic, even social. Yesterday we had that conversation with the governor of Bauchi State, and he's also said it's something that's right there on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. The fact that the president should listen, and that was his passing shot yesterday, that the president should listen to Nigerians, the president should listen to governors. And how that plays out, I guess it is left to be seen. So there is that position in some quarters, particularly among the governors, concerning this tax bill in particular, that the president is not listening to them.
So you see, context is important even in the way he responded. I listened to his interview. He was not rude to the president. In fact, he was very cautious, and I respect that. And as a governor of a state, he's speaking on behalf of his state. There are some governors who share his view, and some who have a divergent view regarding that. The part I disagree with him is the part that he creates the insinuation that the president does not listen. Why? Because if as a group of governors you do not get the president to do your biddings, it doesn't mean he doesn't respond to Nigeria, because the governors are 36 and the minister of FCT maybe 37, but the Nigerian people are over 200 million. And you know, because you started by talking about trust deficit in the country, you know that for the most part, governors or leaders do not really speak the intention and the interest of their people. So you have to, in order for me to separate that, and the governor was very explicit in the way he responded. He said, look, my state is dependent on VAT and taxes. So this decision is going to affect my state. He's very honest about that. But the government has communicated in a very clear terms to all the governors and the stakeholders and all who care to listen that the tax reform bill is actually going to help your own state and not enter your state. But the tax reform bill is also encouraging production. You have, as we are for the step of the rain, interrogated leaders on the need for us to build a production-based economy and not one that is dependent on stamps from federal government. And that is the direction we all are looking. Dialogue is important. If the president is not listening, then the president would have simply approached the Supreme Court, get the verdict of court, and then begin to force the tax reform into through their throat. But it is still under consideration, and it went through the National Assembly. I think that rather than scapegoating and blackmailing the president, the governors should talk to their lawmakers, because the way the democracy works, he has presented his bill to the National Assembly. It is the National Assembly that will deliberate and do what they need to do in the process of the passage. So if a governor has a concern, in my view, after having that conversation with the federal government, is to dialogue with the members of the National Assembly from your state to take and articulate your concern in the National Assembly. At the end of the day, it will come down to voting. I think that a lot of people are blackmailing the president. And I'm not particularly mentioning anybody. Because if the president is not a legislative branch of the government. No matter how, except if you are saying the president should withdraw the tax bill. I have not seen a single governor in Nigeria, Mr. Ayo, who says that the tax reform bill is not good for Nigeria. No, I've not heard. I have only heard that governors from the states where if these taxes are implemented, it will reduce their revenue. They are complaining because it will reduce their own revenue. I think let us distill and separate the chaff from the sheep. And it is only natural if you are collecting 10,000 every day, and with this introduction, it's likely going to be 8,000 for you to react. But don't use that to say it is a reflection of what the masses are thinking about, because the tax reform bill primarily benefits the common man. You know the content, so there's no time for us to be able to discuss more. It is a people-centric tax reform. So the governor should align with that, and then the deliberation can go on. You can deliberate with the president and make your recommendation, but you cannot throw the baby with the bathwater.
You know, when my colleagues in the media had that interface with the president dared them to mention one minister that wasn't working. Maybe for some reason, you know, my colleagues weren't able to point out the minister of power, because it was the instinctive thing that came to me just viewing it live. And I'm still wondering, is it that the president doesn't have the information that the national grid collapsed at least 12 times last year, 2024? Or that the minister himself, that the president is not aware that the minister is blaming it on vandalism, when even the NNPCL was also talking about sabotage at some point before the GMD of the NNPCL decided, I'm going to take the bull by the horn and I'm going to sit down there and make sure that these things get done. And thankfully, we have 2 refineries optimally now, working right now. So talking about that, what is the president aware of everything that is going on? Is the president aware that the national grid collapsed 12 times last year and the minister is blaming it on vandalism?
So to be honest with you, this is where I will indict the members of the press. You bring us every day and you try to flog us with a whipping flog on issues regarding to government. In fact, it got to a point where people said, why are you people shielding the president? Bring him out and let him face the Nigerian people. The president came unscripted, very clear about his messaging, very clear about his responses to the question. It is not one person that interviewed him that you will say, okay, there are supervening events. I think it's about 6 or 7 high-level media representatives, and
7
he challenged
actually.
them. 7, and he challenged them as you mentioned one. The only person they mentioned was Wiki, and you know that when it comes to performance, that's the wrong way. If you are going to report Wiki to the president on other matters, that may be a viable report. But if it is on performance, which was the context in which he said point at one, you know that Wiki was even a distraction. They fail, Mr. Ayo. They failed to mention one. Who are you going to blame? You are going to blame them and not us. You are going to blame them and not me.
Well, I'm putting the question to you now, Mr. Bwala. I'm putting the question to you now. These things happen in the media. We get all those things from time to time. And I know you understand because sometimes you send us some feedback as well when we're on air. So answer the question, Mr. Bwala. Is it that the president is not aware at that time that the national grid had collapsed quite a number of times?
The president is aware of what is happening in Nigeria. He has a firm grip. Remember, if the president does not know the need for effectiveness and punishment, as a means by which you strengthen governance, the president will not have introduced performance indicators. Performance indicators, performance assessment, sorry. He introduced that, and he has the measure by which he checkmate the deliverables as against the expectation for each minister and ministry. Now, at his own level, he did what he had to do the other time when he rejigged a little bit. The president is welcoming. And if you have noticed, this president on several occasions, when there is a public outcry on issues, he has reacted. So, assuming without considering that there are 5, 10, or even 15 ministers that are non-functional or ineffective, if these people were mentioned before the president and you adduce facts to support, like in the case of power now, where you are mentioning number of times the grid collapse, let's assume you mentioned what you are likely to get in that interview will either be a reason that the president will give as to why the grid collapsed, or that would have been a revelation to the president of the need to have to look deep into the power ministry and do what he has to do. Before I was appointed, I've had opinions on this matter and I've expressed that. But you also know the workings of government. I speak for the president. Whatever position the president has taken, that is the position I'm aligning with in respect of this matter. And then putting the case back to the media. If you think there are people who have not performed, you are free to mention them and mention their activities. And then there will always be a feedback from government. The way the government is built it's not like because you put somebody, it is sacrosanct. And you know that the president is not afraid to sack anybody in his government. This is one president that I can tell you for free that he is very, very free to sack. He's not held under hostage by any minister. There is nobody in his administration that is indispensable. But if you have facts, bring the facts to the table of the president, and then the president will assess that.
The president talked about the National Credit Guarantee Company. I think that's something that he's floating right now. It's called the National Credit Guarantee Company, and he says it's going to be on board before the second quarter of the year. And headlines are carrying it this morning. They're saying this is expected to reduce food prices in the country. Could you talk to us a little bit about that as we wrap up?
Yeah, so the national guarantee the government established this year is to work in partnership with critical stakeholders and agencies such as the Bank of Industry, Consumer Credit Corporation, National Sovereign Investment Agency, even the Ministry of Finance, private sector, and multilateral institutions. The whole idea is that to stand as a guarantee, especially for those ones that are underserved, like women and youth, so that they will be able to access funds for the purposes that it is intended for, whether business, entrepreneurship, and all of that. And it's a very wonderful initiative that we would only call on the Nigerian people to be on the lookout and take advantage of those opportunities. The problem we have with Nigeria is that when government roll out an initiative, they stay from a distance. They don't look at the opportunities that are open for them and make the effort to access it. I remember there were concerted campaign in Nelform before people access it. Even when they introduced one other credit system, they had to be calling people to take advantage of it. The citizens will be on the lookout because all of these policies are meant for them. for the purposes of affecting them positively. So it's a good initiative. When the company is established, it will now stand as a guarantee for the youth and for the women for the purpose of accessing the funds they need to do business.
We do have to let you go there, but I want to thank you very much, Mr. Daniel Bwala, for being with us on the program. And good luck with all the work I know you have ahead of you. And thanks for dressing sharp on the new year. Most people don't realize you're supposed to do that on the 1st of January. You're supposed to dress sharp. I want to thank you so much again. God bless you and Happy New Year.
Have a good day. Thank you. Thank you very much.